Hello everyone, welcome to another video here on the Draftarig YouTube channel. Um, this will be another draft review. You might have seen some of the other power rankings or draft reviews so far, and you're here for the Teal League. That's the league on the bottom right. My name is Gabo, and I'm the draft league commissioner for the league this season. And why is this a draft review, not a power ranking, as you might have seen some other leagues do? This is because the T League is our beginner league. Everybody in this league is new to drafting. It's the first draft for 13 of the 14 participants, and one of the participants had a little bit of a rough season, the last one. That's why they decided to go back to the beginner league. So I don't see like I wouldn't want to rank them in any particular order from best to worst draft. It's their first experience, so we'll just talk about every draft individually and see what did they do good, what did what can one might improve upon. And yep, as you might can see on the profile picture below, I'm here on my own, so I don't have any partner to do this with me. So I hope you enjoy my company for the next about an hour when I talk about some Pokemon drafts. Yep, so let's just dive right into it. The first draft is the Houston Crows, and they are coached by Queen Moira. Before I talk about the draft itself, let me get some things straight, especially if you might be a T League participant that's watching, or if you're new to drafting in general. What do all the weird letters and stuff mean? Well, here on the Draftarig Discord, we have a ranking of every mon. S plus is like the highest tier, and F is like the worst tier, and everything else is like in between. But you, of course, have to draft something from each tier, otherwise the draft would be kind of senseless. And yeah, that way you pick up your team, and just that you kind of know which power levels the mons are in and what the letters mean. Oh, you might also notice that there are no Terra wildcards that are also there on our server. You might have seen them in other videos. That's because not all Teal participants have sent me their Terra wildcard yet, but they have to do so until today's evening on the day of the recording. So I hope they will do that. But I have 9 of the wildcards, and I've written them down, so whenever I have a wildcard, I will tell you about it. But now let's start heading into our actual first draft, Houston Crows by Queen Mara, as I said. The first thing that sticks out to me in this draft is, of course, the Sand Core that was drafted in the middle. A little bit late for Sand Core, I'd say, but if it wasn't contested, sure, just go for it. We have Gigalith and Excadrill in the middle, like the B and D pick. I think these two make a perfect Sand Core that they fit pretty good together. Gigalith, I think, overperformed every season I've seen it in. Excadrill is like a very good sand abuser, also sets up rocks and spins. So fills a lot of roles for a sand team. We also have Dracovish, their A pick on the right hand side, which also has Sand Rush and really pressures the opponent because still Dracovish in Sand is allowed to not run Choice Scarf, but can run stuff like Choice Band instead. And this way really put some pressure on the opponents. Like, you don't want a Choice Banded Dracovish to Vicious Rend your wall because it probably won't lift it. Other than that, we have a very exciting first pick. The Houston Crows decided to first pick Mega Ampharos, and I think that might be the first Mega Ampharos first pick ever, or at least in the history of our server. So I hope it will put in some work for its first pick potential. And some other highlights I've seen this draft are Palkia. Palkia is like it's not solid. I would say it's a good S plus pick. It's really bulky. It really does a lot of damage. It's really tough to deal with, and it can run a lot of sets like Scarf, Specs, Assault West, maybe even Life Orb. Has a lot of damage output, just a good mon. And one mon I'm very excited to see on this team is Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu recently dropped to C. It was B below. And why is the C tier so important? Well, on our server, there's the rule that you only can Terra mons that are C and below into the step types. Other than your Terra wildcard, you can Terra wildcard into an extra type, but every mon C and below can Terra into its steps, and I think that really helps Tapu Bulu a lot. I think Terra Grass Tapu Bulu has big damage output potential, and Terra Fairy Tapu Bulu finally has a fairy move that it can use, so I'm really excited to see that one in action. Other than that, yeah, some interesting picks. I'm not the very big Kartana fan myself, but it might be better in the sand when it's a little bit protected. Its special defense is a little bit boosted. Yeah, Other than some nice DEF picks, just a lot of stuff. Of course, a mascot pick in Honchkrow. We always love mascot picks. The draft is missing a little bit of types, namely fire, normal, fighting, poison, psychic, and ice. I think poison, fire, and normal can be a little bit of a struggle, but I'm sure the sand team will do fine without them. One big weakness that I noticed when I looked at the team a little bit more thoroughly is an ice weakness. Not as much for regular ice moves. They are fine, I guess, but freeze dry really is a really big problem for the team. I think like 6 months are weak to freeze dry. Two of them are 4 times weak to it. I think even 7 months are weak to freeze dry because I think Golduck is the only ice switcher they have. So that can be a little bit of a struggle. Like freeze dry, big problem for the team, and also like Ice Beam, Blizzard are also a little bit of concern. Also, the team is a little bit slow. Even in sand, it can be outsped by very fast Scarfers, and without sand, it's like really slow. It caps at a little bit above 100 speed, I think, with Katana and Palkia, and that can be a struggle, especially if the team doesn't have any priority, which this team has not. I think it has Sucker Punch from Honchkrow, and that's about it. But I still think that's a very fun draft. I hope Queen Mora has a great first season with us, and I think it's still a lot of fun to be had with this team. We're moving on to the second pick overall, and these are the Phantom Thieves, coached by Trevenant. You heard it right. Trevenant is coaching the Phantom Thieves. I think that's very flavorful, and I love the Phantom Thieves. I think the Phantom Thieves are probably my favorite franchise name. If you haven't played Persona 5, you should play it. It's a great game, and this is a reference to that. And what can you see again? It's another weather team, this time a rain team, drafted in the first 2 picks with Mega Swampert Pelipper, a classic combination in A. Mega Swampert, a very good rain abuser. It gets very fast in there. It hits like a truck. It also gives a very much needed electric immunity to rain teams. But after that, I think the team dived a little bit too much into the water theme, I'd assume. Barraskewda on 4th pick, I think it's very interesting with Mega Swampert because the two fill very similar roles. They are fast, physical rain abusers because they have Swift Swim, both of them. I think Barraskewda is very good as well, but I don't know if a team needs both of them. I also think Volcanion is pretty interesting in a rain team because it doesn't enjoy the rain too much. Tentacruel is fine again. It has Rapid Spin. It's a wall in rain. It fills a little bit of a different role than the other Watermons. So I don't know if that's a little bit too much water types for my personal taste, especially if you have to pick up Trevenant and Phantom, who like both fill exactly the same role, and Phantom is more like of a purely mascot pick, which probably won't come a lot of matches. I would also have appreciated another electric type, because I think Rotom, the regular Rotom, might not be the coolest Thunder abuser that I can think of from the top of my head. But Cobalion is a very solid pick, and I'm excited to see Lugia finally in action. I think Lugia has a lot of potential. It's like so bulky. It can fill a lot of roles. It can be like a defogging wall. It can be like a setup, Calm Mind, sweeper. It can be a stall wall with substitute, toxic, roost, stuff like that. So I'm very excited to see Lugia in action. But I think the team might struggle a bit because of the abundance of water types. Because of that, it also lacks some types, namely Fairy, Dragon, and Dark. There are also some others, but Fairy, Dragon, and Dark might be a little bit rougher types to miss in a draft. Yeah, other than that, the speed is a little bit better than the last team we saw. Electric can become a really tough matchup, especially if Mega Swampert is gone. But we set up rocks, we set up T-Spikes, we have some defoggers, so the hazards are fine, just like in the last draft we saw. Priority is a little rough, but like I said, the team is fast, so that hopefully won't be a problem. And we move on. Just that, I hope like Trevenant also has a great season. He is a very vocal new member, so I hope he enjoys his time on our server. And we move on to the next draft by the Seattle Survivors or Survivors. I'm gotta admit, I'm not really sure how you pronounce the English name of VP but this is coached by Basilisk, and Basilisk is the one returning coach that I mentioned earlier, who already did a season on our server, but like I said, he struggled a little bit and he wanted to be put into the Beginners League again. So This is the first team where I know the Terra wildcard. That's Cerulege as a Terra Grass, an absolute classic wildcard. I think a lot of people thought about, thought one day or another about using a Cerulege as a wildcard. It's just a very cool new mon, and with Flash Fire, Grass is just a very fitting Terra type for it. It has some setup options, can also run weak armor, cool mon in general. This draft is of course a little bit more diverse than the last one we saw because there is no weather theme, and although there's a Tapu Koko, we have just a single electric terrain abuser and also no other electric type to make use of that, so that's interesting. But that's just, I would say, that's just a lot of good mons that we see here. I'm not a big Tapu Koko fan myself, but it's just very fast and it offers a lot of momentum with both Volt Switch and U-turn. And Zygarde, Annihilate, Cerulege, I guess Seppi Royal as well, Quaquaval and Comfy are all like great setup options in their tiers, I'd say. Like you can Dragon Dance with Zygarde, you can even bulk up and not bulk up, Coil and Extreme Speed with it. You have Annihilate with bulk up, you have Cerulege with Sword Stance or Weak Armor, like I just said. You have the contrary Seppi Royal that just spams its Leaf Storms, and I think all of these mons can really be brought in and can be brought to shine in this draft. I think it would be really annoying to prep for it because you have to prep for so many setup options. You also have the very fast Iron Crown. That's a new mon from the DLC. It's a Steel and Psychic type, if you didn't know that already. It has its special move is Taiken Cutter. That's like a dual wing beat, but it's special and Steel type. And like I said, it also is like a future Paradox mon, so it has Quark Drive, and its high stat will be boosted by the Electric Terrain set by Tapu Koko. It's also pretty fast. It can hit like a truck. So yeah, that's really something that the opponents of Basilisk have to watch out for. I think the E and F tiers get a little bit sketchy, but apart from that, and really lacking options for hazards, you only have Annihilate that can set Stealth Rocks. I really don't think it wants to set Stealth Rock every match, but other than that, you have defoggers, you have, like I said, a lot of momentum, a lot of mons you learn U-turn, and can position the other setup sweepers. I think that's a very solid team, and like I said, I won't be ranking the drafts we're seeing, but maybe I can give out like 6. I think you could make playoff with these badges if you play your cards right, and I think this definitely would be one of them. This is definitely a playoff contender. It's just a very nice balanced team, and I don't see too many weak points in it other than the hazards, but you can play around it, I hope. Next are the Kuraishi. These are coached by Killer Max Zombie 10, and you can already hear an interview of Killer Max Zombie, who also talks about his draft a little bit. I won't go into detail what he said there, but if you want to check that out, it's also on our YouTube channel, so go check that out later. Of course, after you watch this whole video for like, I don't know, engagement time or something. It's called something along those lines. The Kuraishi have a very interesting setup. Let's call it that way. Let's start with the positives. I think Killer Max Zombie really picked some banger mons in their respective tiers. Especially, I think Megazard X is a very cool Mega Pokemon. It's a very good Dragon Dancing option. It can sweep whole teams because it just does so much damage. We have Greninja in B. I think that it dropped to B this season is criminal, and it's real steal in there. That's a very good pickup, especially as fourth pick. We have also Gengar, which was recently buffed. It dropped from B to C. I also don't really see why that happened, because I think every time I saw it, it performed very good, and now it can Terra as well. So that's cool. And I also think that Skeledirge is a one that can solve a lot of problems of a draft, and I think even the pre-evolution of Skeledirge, which was picked up in F, is a little bit of a sleeper pick in F, but I don't really see why you would play it if you have the option to run Skeledirge. So I don't know about the double pickup. We also have Charmeleon, which was picked up together with Megazard X, and I don't think Charmeleon will be brought to a single game because we have so many fire types already. The Aggron in E is also the Terra wildcard with the Terra type Dragon, in case you're interested in that. Now we move to the problem part of this draft, and that's not even that we're missing some types that can be very important, like normal fighting, flying, grass, ice, or fairy. I think the biggest problem of this draft is if you take this draft and put it into a prep doc, you will see that this draft runs a whopping 8 ground weaknesses in, I think that's correct, yeah, in this through Megazord X, Metagross, Gengar, Charmeleon, the pre-evolution of Skeledirge, Alolan Raichu, and Aggron all are weak to Earthquake or Earth Power moves, and Garchomp, Genesect, and Greninja all don't um, interact with that in any way, so they're not immune or don't resist it, and I think that's a huge problem. If you're that weak to one type, especially if it's ground, which is one of the easiest to hit stab moves in the game, that just spells disaster. Like one Scarf user with Earthquake, especially like the Sand team you saw earlier. I think Killer Maxon will have some really big struggles throughout the season, but maybe some trades can fix that later on. Also, rocks look pretty rough. Our only defogging option is Mega Charizard X, who definitely doesn't want to defog. Like usually you run Dragon Dance 3 attacks, or maybe Dragon Dance Roost 2 attacks, or something along those lines. But defog is not the preferred option on this mon. We can set up Hazard itself, and I think we are okay. The speed is fine on this team. It's and it has a lot of cool mons that can do a lot of stuff individually. I just don't think they play together in any way, shape, or form. I just think Greninja, Genesect, and Megazord X, these are a cool combination because Genesect and Greninja can bring in Megazord X and then it can sweep stuff, and they are special attackers which go very well with the very hard physical attack in Megazord X. But other than that, I think the Kurashi will have a tough season ahead of them, but I'm happy that they'll prove me wrong. They just rolled up with 6 air balloons to the first match. Watch them. Nice. We move on to the fifth overall pick, and these are the Liberi Astrorum, and they are coached by Preseason Stellae, and these are of course Latin names, or I don't know, of course these are Latin names, and they mean the Liberi Astrorum are like the children of the stars, and they are coached by the Herald of the Stars, so very flavorful combination. There, I also love the logo, by the way. So what Children of the Stars were drafted here? Well, the first one that springs into your eye if you look at this draft is, of course, the very shiny S+ pick. This is Terrapagos Stella. Terrapagos Stella is the newest addition to our draft board because it just recently got released in the DLC, and this is the first season it's legal in, and maybe the only season it's legal in, because a lot of people agree that it's probably the strongest S+ pick we ever allowed. If you don't know what Terrapagos Stella does, this is the terrestrialized form of Terrapagos, which has like 700 base stats. It has like 160 def, 160 spec def, 160 special attack, something along those lines. It's not totally made up. It's really like something along those around these numbers. It has a unresisted Stellar type move with 140 base power. That's pretty crazy. It has every coverage option on the planet, but it doesn't really need it because it just sets up with Calm Mind and sweeps your team with its unresisted move. So a little bit of a tough one to prep for, I think, and very cool of the Libera Strom to have picked it up. I also think that Tornado Therian and Rotomosh go very well together with the turtle because they can help bring her in slowly with U-turn or Volt Switch. I also think this team has some other banger picks. I'm a really big fan of Wuchien myself. Wuchien is also the Terra wildcard for this team with Terra Ghost to get rid of its bug and fighting weakness. So that's a very fitting wildcard, can be very annoying, super tough to deal with if it starts to wall your team and leech seed your entire team. I think Victini is an absolute hype pick. I love Victini myself. I'd love to draft it myself one day. I just think V-Create is such a cool move. And it just has so nice coverage options. Also learns Trick Room to mess with the opponents. And there's also Nidoking, who always overperforms in C. Just such a big damage output, such a cool mon. And Kofarigos can also be a very nice Ghost Wall. Maybe a little bit redundant if you already have Ghost for Chen, but let's not talk about that. You also have Whiscash, the Dragon Dancing, Catfish. It's a catfish, right? Yeah, let's just say it's a catfish, and Dragon Dances, and it's a cool F pick. And something that I want to mention especially is the combination of Tinkaton and Altaria. Tinkaton is a very solid pick in C, I think. Altaria might be not so solid in F, but what I want to say with them, these two form a perfect core. What's a perfect core? That means that the type combination of Fairy Steel and Dragon Flying, they switch into each other's weaknesses perfectly. So they cover each other's weaknesses perfectly without missing anything. These cores are always very thought after. There are some other cores that you might already know from OU or other formats. I think Scissor, Rotom Wash is a very well-known one, or Hydreigon Aegislash, that's another one. But perfect cores are always cool, and I think it's nice that Stella managed to fit a perfect core into her draft with her FNC pick. I think this is a very, very, very solid team, and I would need to give out another playoff contender with this, I think. Also, Terrapoco Stella can really just carry games, and I think the team surrounding us is pretty good as well. Could I mention something else about... I think the only thing I've written down in my notes is the team is a little bit slow, but I don't think that matters, because the team is pretty bulky, and it doesn't really care that you hit it first, because it just hits back a lot harder. We can set up a lot of hazards, we have defog options, we even have a spinner option in Terrapagos itself. So it's just a very solid team. I'd love to play this myself, by the way. That's very up my alley. Yep, let's move on to the Delta Dragons. Of course, I think inspired by the Delta episode of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. They are coached by Killzone, another very cool logo with the shiny Rayquaza there. So yeah, let's do a little bit of engagement bait, as you say. If you just look at this team for the first time, what's the first thing you notice? Write it down in the comments below. Welcome back from the comment section. Yeah, well, my concern are the fighting and fairy types, because those are a lot of fighting and fairy types that were drafted in there. This makes the type chart pretty weird. Like, I don't want to lie, the type chart of this team looks very off, because it has a lot of problems to deal with fire. I mean, that's weird, because they just drafted fairy and fighting ones, it seems like. But I don't know, like, if you put this team into a prep doc, you can see that it just has a little way of interacting with, like, actually all the 3 elemental types, but like fire is a little bit of a big problem. Thank you for that, Gabo. Well, what do you think about the individual mons? I am a fan of Mega Summer Center. Oh my god, I just ruined my whole punchline. Of Summer Center Crowned, because I think it's just a mega evolution of Summer Center. I think they're just very similar to Mega Evolutions. You give it a locked item, it gets 100 base stats, and it adds a type. That's just like a Mega Evolution. I played it once when it was A tier. I think it was severely under tiered. I think it's still playable in S-. It's super fast, just like Iron Valiant, by the way, an absolute all-star in draft. The team in general can be very fast. That's pretty good. But we also lack fairy or ice switch-ins, like really good ones. And yeah, I don't really see a game plan. That's like the main struggle. We only have one rock setter in Torterra. We don't have any way to get rid of rocks or other hazards. We only have one U-turn to position our pretty offensive mons, I'd say. And like I said, we have some overlapping, just a lot of overlapping mons. I think Sylvelli and Mega Gardevoir fill pretty similar roles. I think Iron Valiant and Enamus Incarnate fill very similar roles. I don't know if we would ever, like, I don't know if you would ever like to bring both to a match, and I wouldn't. I mean, I guess an Amotherian and Iron Valiant, I can kind of see the argument, but Sylveon and Mega Gardevoir are a little bit of a bigger concern. I also don't know the Terra wildcard of this team yet, but if I had to guess, it probably will be Torterra or Malamar, maybe Phalanx for the memes. Phalanx, by the way, is a very high pick. I'm very happy that Phalanx got picked up. And there's also, of course, Sora Hisui, which can always be annoying. But you've a little story about Sora Hisui. Sora, it's not Sora, it's of course Sora Hisui. But it started off, I think, in A or B tier. Because everyone assumed that Ghost normal was such a good typing. And you can even fool your opponents, it's so good. Turns out, while being fast, it doesn't really do enough damage to anything. So I think, but in D now, it's a pretty nice pickup, and it can really mess with an opponent's game plan. But other than that, yeah, I see a little bit of struggles. Like I said, the fire, the hazards, the momentum. But I'm very happy to see Killzone make this team work. And yeah, good luck in your season. I hope you also have a lot of fun in it. We move on to the Aura Guardians, and they are coached by Rainstar. Of course, the Aura Guardians pick their mascot. First pick, Mega Lucario, very strong as plus tier, has a very good ability, very good stats, and very good coverage options. Can sweep entire teams on its own, and it's supported by a really interesting draft. One thing that comes to mind is it misses a ground type, so it's a little bit weak to Volt Switch. But I think it has a very nice double game plan of being fast with Mega Lucario, Iron Bundle, especially boosted by Boost Energy, maybe even Zorak is a little bit a faster one. But it also has like a small Trick Room game plan with Hatterene and Gudra Hisui, Mark as well, maybe even Breloom with its 70 speed. So that's very interesting. Breloom, of course, also learns Spore that can be very groundbreaking in some matchups. Yeah, I think the picks individually are fine. I think Hatterene is the best Trick Room setter you can ask for. That's not even fine. It's very good, I'd say. I think Iron Bundle is a very solid pick. It especially gets the thought of the move Freeze Dry, and it has a lot of special attack behind this Freeze Dry. And I think some teams in this league will have to work away around this very strong Freeze Dry, maybe even boosted by a Booster Energy. Frostmoth is always a cool F pick, can also always put in some work. We also know the Terra wildcard, this is Moltres with the Terra type Water. Now we move on to the smaller problems of this draft. I think hazards, the only really hazard option is for Fortress, which also gets Rapid Spin, so it's also its main. I guess Moltres gets C4 as well, but like Fortress will be the main hazard option and removal for this draft, and that can be a little bit challenging because you don't want to bring Fortress every match, especially if you have a big fire weakness like the Aura Guardians unfortunately have. Like they have a single resist with Moltres, also after Terras with Water, of course, but other than that, they have two 4-time weaknesses. They have Breloom and Mega Lucario, who don't appreciate the fire, and I think for such I guess no, they have pretty defensive options with Max and Moltres and Gudra Hisui. So maybe they'll be fine with switching into flamethrowers and stuff. Fighting also is a little bit of a problem with the draft, but that might be more fine. I don't actually know why I said it might be fine because of Moltres and Mark. Oh, I guess Hatterene. Hatterene is very good. It's very good to prey on fighting types, so that might be okay. That we're a little bit overboarded into a fighting weakness as well. The momentum is pretty nice. I think that's very good for Mega Lucario. I just think Iron Bundle Mega Lucario, that's just a very strong 1-2. And the people need to prep for that, otherwise they get swept by it. But they also need to prep for the Trick Room angle with like Hatterene and Gudra Hisui, otherwise they get swept by that. So I think that's a very cool draft. And I would say I would give another ticket for the playoffs to this. I'm at 3 now. I didn't write those down. I just have to watch out that I don't give more than 6 away. Or if I give more than 6 away, just know that you all did a great job at drafting. We move on to the Royal Piplups. They were the 8th pick of our draft, if I remember correctly, and if I counted correctly, and they are coached by Noodle. Although they were our 8th pick, Noodle made the last pick of our draft, but not because she wanted to, because she had to, because she missed the timer a few times. I'm watching you, Noodle. I'm ever watchful. Don't miss your matches if you watch this, please. The Royal Piplups have drafted maybe the only team that I'd say is you could really call hyper offense. This is a hyper offensive team. This team is Omega fast. The slowest mon they have is Goldango with 84 speed. They drafted a bunch of good wall breakers in Mega Sat Y. Funnily enough, without any other Sun Abuser. They have Miascarada with Choice Band, Flower Trick, breaks through a lot of stuff. They have Urshifu Single Strike, Choice Band, Wicked Blow, breaks through a lot of stuff. They have Guts Swallow, which also is able with its Facade to break through a lot of stuff. And they have some setup sweepers to go with that, namely like Keldeo with Calm Mind, Goldango with Nasty Blood, Hexeros, that's not Max X, that's Hexeros with Dragon Dance. And they even, to top that all off, have 2 Quiver Dancing options with Ribombee and Vivillon, and Ribombee even gets Sticky Web, which is very good for such hyper-offensive teams. By the way, also I think the dog, who I forgot the name of because I want to call him Frou Frou, but that's like a yogurt from where I come from, so that's definitely not the name of the dog. Isn't it Furfrou? It's something along those lines. It's a very good F pick, by the way. It's super fast, like 110 speed for an F pick, and has an ability that halves all physical damage done against it. So that's a good F pick. What are the problems I see? Well, the problem with hyper offenses in general is once you stop this team, I think it struggles a little bit to get going again, to like fight for position, and also has no hazard options, which is always a struggle on hyper offense because you usually want hazards. I think a suicide lead would help this team a lot. They only have spikes on Meowscarada currently. Something like Azelf or other good suicide leads might help this team a little bit. But we have a lot of momentum to get all of our setup sweepers in. But I also gotta say, I think the setup sweepers Noodle drafted are cool. Like, you don't see them every day. They're not like your standard stock Dragon Dancing. It's Hexeros instead of. I think Hexeros very good CT, by the way. They do, I don't know the. I do know, by the way, I do know the Terra Wildcard, that's Vivillon and Fire. Very interesting Terra Wildcard, never seen that before. But I think Hexeros can do a lot of work as a CT Dragon Dancer. I think the Quiver Dancing options can do a lot of work. I'm very, very excited to see how Noodle plays with this team, because I think it's a little bit hard to play. I myself still struggle with playing hyper offense in draft, but I'm very excited to see her play, and I hope she has a great time in her first draft with us, or her first draft league with us. Let's move on to the Chicago Ursas. The Chicago Ursas have drafted the 3rd Rain team, and of course they are coached by Izurkai, I think that's their name, and they have drafted the 3rd Rain team of, not the 3rd Rain team, but the 3rd Reddit team and the 2nd Rain team of the Teal League, at this time with a combination of Politoed and Arcaludon. I don't know how like up to date you're with the new Pokemon. That's why I always try to explain the newer ones. Arcaludon in A, that's like, I think it's my favorite new Pokemon from Generation 9. I love Duraludon. Now it got an evolution. It looks like the Golden Gate Bridge. It's just a very good mon. It has stamina as its ability. It can set up rocks, but it also does a lot of damage. You might think it's pretty slow because it's a bridge, but it's like 90 or 95 speed. That's pretty good. And why is it drafted in rain? Because it has a signature move called Electroshot, which is basically a meteor beam, but it charges within 1 turn if it's used in rain. So that's the reason why it works in rain. But I've gotta admit, I don't understand where the rest of the draft went with that. I think we're missing a good rain abuser, like a water type rain abuser, because our only Swift Swim option is Overquill. I don't know if Overquill wants to run Swift Swim every match. I think Intimidate is also pretty good on it. We have Zapdos and Therian, which pretty much fill the same role. Thunderous is just a little bit more offensive and learns Weather Ball, while Zapdos is a little bit more defensive and learns Hurricane. We have Murkrow as another rain setter, but I don't even know if we need that much rain. Like, Arcaludon works without rain, Overquill works without rain, Thunderous and Zapdos both can work without rain. So, like, we just have a little bit, a small rain theme. And then the Mega Blastoise came in later. Mega Blastoise is always a bane of beginner leagues, I'd say, because everybody needs to get swept by Shell Smash once until they learn a lesson that this is a good mon. And I think Mega Blastoise works very well together with Sceptile, which recently got Shed Tail. If you don't know, Shed Tail is like a move that's like, it lets you switch out and sets up a substitute. So you set up a substitute for the next one that you switch in. So you set up a substitute for Mega Blastoise, bring it in safely, quick Shell Smash behind that, sweep the whole team. That's a good game plan, and I think a lot of people will lose to that. Beware, very cool epic. I love Beware. It's just a cool mon, what can I say? Not too big a fan of, like Chimichio is a high pick, but I don't really do a lot in drafts usually, and Gastrodon has the same struggle as any like of the water ground mons like Swampert or Quagsire. It has a 4-time grass weakness, but if you can play around that, it's a very good one. Yeah, I'm not too sure where I would rank this draft, because I think if Zapdos or Tornadoes get replaced by something else, just anything else, I think the draft instantly wins on a lot of power. But I think I will still give them one of the playoff tickets, because I think the combination of Sceptile and Blastoise Mega is very good in the beginning league, and a Carludon can carry a lot of the matches on its own. We're of course again missing some types, namely Ghost, Fire, and Fairy. These are pretty important types to miss. Also, there's no Fairy switching, which can be a struggle, but as you might have noticed, a lot of people are just missing Pheromons in this league, so that might not be a big of a trouble. Hazards are very good, momentum is okay, we don't have priority, and we are not that fast, but we're like okayish fast, so I think that's fine. Ursus, you get one of my playoff tickets. Next up, we have time to draft with, how do you say that? A weird one. I think they call it in the time to draft is of course coached by Time to Break, and they have like the wildest logo of our league, I'd say. Why did I say this is a wild or a weird one? I think the draft makes a lot of stuff right. They did a lot of stuff right. We have Corviknight, which is like one of the best A tiers you can ask for. It's a great wall. It has U-turn. It has defog. It lifts just a lot of stuff. It can set up with bulk up or iron defense. That's just a great mon. We have the combination of Slowking and Sandslash Alola, which was also drafted in Premier. That's, of course, the combination of Snows, Chilly Reception, which sets up Snowscape, for the Sandra Slushing, Alola and Sandslash. It's a classic. You get a lot of power out of your F-pick for that. That's good. You have Slacking, which is always annoying to deal with, because do you bring Protect or not? Wow. Crocodile. Crocodile sets up rocks, is a Moxie Sweeper, can do a lot of stuff right. Nice. Aegislash, all-time classic. Nice. These are like a lot of good ones on the team individually. I think Chi-Yu without Sun can be a little bit of a lacking for an S- tier. You can always put a Scarf of Specs on that and just click a fire move. That's just what Chi-Yu does, and that's fine. Regieleki is a very controversial B pick. Of course, it's never allowed to drop you to C, because as a Terra Wildcard it would be way too strong. But as a not Terra Wildcard, it just gets very hard walled by ground types. But as you might have seen, some of the beginner drafts lack ground types, so maybe it will get a lot of value in these matchups. But the big struggle or the weirdness about this team, in my opinion, is, by the way, Slowking also offers a Trick Room angle with like the Golurk. Is it called Golurk? Is it, of course, like the ground ghost type? Of course, Slowking itself. You have even Aegislash, which is not too terrible in Trick Room. Cradily as well. All of these are fine in Trick Room. That's cool. The weird thing is that this team is a little bit weak to ground once again, but you have Corviknight for that. The problem is Corviknight is not as good as pressuring ground mons in itself. And the bigger problem is it's lacking special attack. I know the first pick Chi-Yu and Regieleki, and they still have Slowking later on. But like I said, I think Regieleki is really hard to use in some matchups. Chi-Yu is a one-trick pony. Let's just face it. Will always click either a Fire Move or Dark Pulse. It doesn't have any coverage options. And it's pretty easy to take down. Like once it gets a hit, it's just dead. And I think after that, the team can get walled pretty hard by physical walls. That's a little bit of a struggle that I see with this draft, but I still think there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of fun stuff in there, and I hope Time to Draft gets a lot of fun out of the season. Ha! I rescued the English sentence. I did it. Next one are the Glacier Park Everlux. They are coached by Whizbang. I also don't know the Terra Wildcard for this one, unfortunately. But, though I do know it. I just lied to you. My bad, sorry. So the Glacier Park Everlux, they first picked Chi and Power because they're, of course, in a Glacier Park. That makes sense. They didn't pick Everlux, but that's a nice step. I'm fine with that. I think the first 4 picks and a few picks later on really just are powerhouses in the respective tier. Chi and Power and Great Tusk are great A tiers. Chi and Power provides a lot of pressure on every opponent because you have to prep for a mon that just one-shots each of your mons because it's just does an insane amount of damage. You have Great Tusk, which can run a ton of sets and solo fixes also your Stealth Rock Rapid Spin problems. You have Mega Metagross, which packs a lot of power for Mega Evolution. Maybe not as much as Mega Lucario, but still a very solid S+ pick. You have Primarina, which is a fan favorite, just does a lot of damage. And of course, the sleeper OP pick, maybe not even sleeper after the last few seasons, Typhlosion Hisui did an amazing job in the last season where it was used. It can run a lot of different sets, and it just does so much damage, even with Eruption, a Scarf Eruption, or just as a Specs Ghost attacker. And it's also the Terra wildcard for this team. It's Terra Dark to protect it a little bit, so that's nice. So this team, I would say, is a pretty top-heavy team because if you combine these picks together with Tangrowth, maybe Thunderous Eye, and just sell them over Quillfish Hisui, which is a fun little wall with Eviolite. I think you've got like all the mons they'll bring this season. I think the F picks are a little bit underwhelming, but I don't think that's a big problem, to be honest. I think this is fine. That we have such that we are such a top heavy team because the top heavy picks are so good and are hard to prep for, to be honest. The only small problems is we're lacking a little bit of momentum. I think this draft would really appreciate some momentum, but sometimes we forget about that. The only struggle, not the only struggle, but one struggle that I noticed is this team has like no special defense. The last team we just saw had no special attack. This team has no special defense. The only thing that can tank some special hits is Primarina, which usually wants to attack and not tank hits. So that might be a struggle. Wigglytuff might come a little bit more as a special wall just for this specific matchup if the opponent has a lot of strong special attackers. Yes, but like I said, Great Tusk and Turtonator and Tangrowth, they're just like insane physical walls. If one of them would be a special wall, I think the draft would be a little bit better. But still, very good draft. I'm inclined to give this a ticket to the playoffs, but I think they're like just below that. But they're fighting for playoffs. All of the contenders will be fighting for playoff spots, but I think that's also a pretty hot contender, but just not enough to get a ticket from me. We move on to the Carolina Incineroars that I didn't call Carolina Incinerators a couple of times because I'm an idiot. They are, of course, coached by Drakion. Of course, it's funny. You might not know that, but now you know. Coached by Drakion. Drakion, that's a draft. It's the only draft with 12 months, not 11. It started off with the definition of a solid S- picks. Mega Kangaskhan, I always say Mega Kangaskhan, like that's the most solid S- pick you can go for. It's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. It can 2-hit every Pokemon that's not Ghost type. It can do a little bit of other fun stuff with Power Punch. It has like Prio with Fake Out. It's fine. It's a totally fine S-1. We have Blaziken, which and Speed Boost is allowed in this format. So Speed Boost Blaziken as a sweeper. All of these beautiful monsters are hidden behind the Aurora Veil of Ninetales Alola, and we also have a Slush Rush user with Beartick. But like this is not a heavily focused Hail team, but we have a Snow option. We have a Snow Skip option. That's okay. I think Serena is a pretty cool D pick. It also gets Rapid Spin. It blocks Prio moves. It hurts a lot. Skarmory solves all of our like hazards problems. It lays hazards for us. It defogs for us. We also know the Terra wildcard. This is Palossand as a water type. Yeah. I'm not sure what to think of this draft. I don't want to... like, the big problem that I see... Oh, well, I don't know if it's a big problem. I don't know. I think the draft is fine. I just don't... I can't put my hand why I wouldn't like the draft. Maybe I would like a little bit a better Slush Rush abuser, but I think this is how you should is maybe a harsh word, but this is how you can draft a Weather Angle. You just like dedicate 2 months to it, and the rest of your team can benefit from the Aurora Way setup by the Ninetales Alola. I think the Aurora Way plus Blaziken option is very cool because you can freely speed boost Sword Dance behind it and then just sweep teams. So like I can't really put my finger why I wouldn't like this team. You know what? While talking about it, I think I'm starting to like this team more and more. It's of course not missing a lot of types. That's pretty cool. Like most of the other teams are missing 3+ types. This only misses Bug and Dark. Dark can be a little bit rough if the opponent has good psychic attackers, but we have a lot of momentum. We're a little bit weak to rocks, but Skarmory solves this for us, I think. Yeah, I think, you know what? I like this team. The Incineroars also get a ticket to the playoffs. This is the 5th ticket. Now I only have 1 more left to give out, but we only have 2 more teams to go. I still hope Draken has a nice time with us on the server, and we move on to the next team, which is the Maritime Mantines. And this is, of course, that's a draft. Look at that. The first 2 picks, we just were talking about good special attackers, especially good psychic special attackers. We have Mega Alakazam, which is probably the strongest and fastest psychic special attacker, an A tier, and Fluttermane, an S-. Fluttermane is, if you believe in data, probably the strongest S- pick we have in our server. I don't personally believe that, but the data suggests it always gets a lot of KOs. It can run like substitute sets, it can run spec sets, it can run booster energy sets. It's annoying to deal with. It deals a lot of damage, and you don't annoy it. You don't annoy it, and you don't want to prep for that, or it's annoying to prep for that. Something. Just think I said one of those 2 sentences. But apart from the 2 very fast special takers, this is like a Trick Room team, right? I'm not insane. We have King Gambit, which really appreciates a Trick Room. We have Makalola, which is fine in Trick Room. And then we have 2 Trick Room setters in Rabaska and Oranguru. And that's interesting. I think that the team has like a lot of psychic types, which is sometimes not great, but they cover up for it in just picking 2 dark types, I guess. We have a Terra Wildcard in Steel Swampert, which also isn't too terrible in Trick Room, and then just 2 straight up walls and Toxapex and Blissey. I love Toxapex, by the way, big Toxapex fan. I know a lot of people hate Toxapex. I think Toxapex is a very cool mon, has Regenerator, can be annoying with T-Spikes, and just takes a lot of hits very well. We have a little bit of a ground problem in this team. And I think a lot of this team relies on the 2 fast special attackers not dying. I think that really is my big struggle with this team. Just in general, I think you have 3 offensive options on this team, like really offensive options, and Fluttermane, Mega Alakazam, and King Gambit. All other mons are either supportive Trick Room mons, which can of course also attack in Trick Room, but are not as strong as other dedicated Trick Room attackers, or offer some kind of utility or our walls. I think Type Null, for example, is a very cool E tier with Eviolite. It's like Omega Tank. It can even set up with Sword Dance. Once the Eviolite gets knocked off, it's not as good, but if you manage to protect your Eviolite, that's pretty cool. But I still think this team lacks firepower apart from the first 3 picks. But I like it. I like Trick Room teams. I like Toxapex. I like Storly teams. That's like my playstyle, let's say. So I have a big place in my heart for this team. But I just can't quite give it a ticket to the playoffs because I just think playing it will be a little bit hard, but prepping for it as well, as I guess. But once you figured out the 3 attackers, it really gets a little bit tough. Well, I still, by the way, the Maritime Mantines are coached by Sky Sparrow. I don't think I mentioned it yet. I hope Sky Sparrow has a great first season with us as well, and gets a lot of fun from playing Trick Room and Storly stuff like me. Yeah. And we move on to our last team. The Las Vegas Gimme Ghouls. They are coached by Status 7. And I've got to admit, when I first saw the first 3-ish picks of this team, I was a little bit concerned for the rest of the league, and I still think I am after I see the whole team. Dragapult is of course one of the strongest first picks you can ask for. Some people say it's the strongest A pick, some people say it's one of the strongest A picks, but nobody says it's the worst A pick. It just is so fast. 142 base speed is just a lot to deal with. It can run a lot of sets. I think that's just what pushes it over the edge. It can be special attacker, it can be a physical attacker, and it can be a support. That's just a lot of stuff in one mon. Then we have, of course, the Samurai Hisui, which has its signature move Ceaseless Edge to set up spikes. We have Glimora, which now that it got Meteor Beam is just a very good C tier pickup. I think a lot of people should look at Glimora when they're drafting. I think it can offer a lot to draft. We have Talonflame, which has a priority with this ability Gale Wings, can also set up Tailwind if we have to. We have one of the, if not the second best S- pick. I know a lot of drafting commissioners will hate me for saying that, but I think Magearna is probably the second strongest S- pick. It just offers so much in one mon. It can set up a trick room and sweep in the trick room. It can set up a shift gear and sweep with the shift gear. It has Volt Switch for momentum. It can set up spikes. It can be just like a wall. It can run Assault Vest and just be unkillable in general. It's just a very good mon. The only thing that I would criticize a little bit in this draft is I would love to have just to talk about the rest of the draft very quickly. Landrotharian is just like maybe not as good as Dragapult in draft, but still an absolute staple in A. Solves your stealth work, your defog options. We have Salamence, which can be a Moxie Dragon Dance sweeper, which everyone has to watch out for. We have Spinder for the memes. So that's all of this is fine. I just think that another Trick Room abuser would have helped this team a lot, because I think Magearna loses a little bit of value if you're just scared of Magearna in a Trick Room. We of course have Spinder, Contrary Spinder, and Ariados, which can both try to abuse the Trick Room because they're both a little bit slow, but I think that would have really helped this team and push it like over the edge even a little bit more as one strong Trick Room abuser. Other than that, team can also be called a little bit top heavy, but just a little bit. I think like all of these mons have one way or another argument for themselves why you should run them in one match. So I think that's fine. Did I write anything else down in my beautiful notes? We have small rock and ice problems, but I think these are not as big as some of the other teams I've mentioned. We have good momentum, we have good hazards, good removal. Yeah, I definitely would love to give the Gimmigos my last ticket to the playoff spots. I think now I've given away 6, so this should be legal. And I, of course, hope that Protestatus 7 has a very nice time with us in his first draft league. Right, so these were all the teams. I hope you had a great time with me talking about every single one of them. If you're like a member of the Teal League and just watched me talk about your team, feel free to DM and talk to me about it. I'm happy to elaborate on any opinions. If you're not a member of Teal League and still want to hate me about my opinions, just write it down in the comments below. That's very good for the algorithm. Tell me why Magearna is actually a very bad Pokemon who you should never draft, or why 8 ground weaknesses are the new go-to strat in any draft league. Other than that, I hope you have a great day. Please feel free to join our server if you're into draft leagues. Like I said, we are the Draftarig. You see our logo on the bottom of your screen. We are the Draftarig server. We will specialize in draft leagues from now on, but you will also have some other events when you join us. If you want to talk to the players directly who drafted these teams, they are all on there. I'm on there. Some better players than me are on there, which have better opinions about drafts. Yeah, I hope you have a great day, and we'll see each other in another video of our server. Bye!